Hello, and welcome to video number 3 as we go through our book study on Bonhoeffer's The Call to Discipleship. Today, we will be going through chapter 6 all the way to 13, the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to go through Matthew 5, the bulk, the entirety of Matthew 5, according to Bonhoeffer. He kind of goes through it here. So that is from the Beatitudes all the way to the enemy, the extraordinary. So pull your books out and just join me as we talk about it. Now, the reason that I make all these videos is just so that when you read Bonhoeffer's A Call to Discipleship, it becomes easier for you to read it. It becomes a lens through which you can look at. And then as you go and read, after you watch this video, you go and you read, and it becomes easier to read. For more reasons why I do this, check out video number 1. So here we are, Beatitudes. Bonhoeffer is going to talk really deeply about Matthew 5, 6, 7 in the next few weeks to come. So we begin with the Beatitudes, and he goes through each of the blessings, right? Blessed are you, blessed are you. And he talks about them specifically, and each one is cast in the lens of what it means to be a disciple. Bonhoeffer says that the blessings of the Beatitudes are for the disciples, not for the general public. So if you are a follower of Jesus Christ and have submitted your will to his and now are journeying with him, this is what your life will look like. And blessed are you. So blessed are you for the poor in spirit. For him, this is the meaning. This means that they have sacrificed it all for the sake of Jesus. The cost of discipleship is poverty. Blessed are they that mourn. They mourn for the world, for the fate of humanity. This is very cool. They have an eschatological view of the world. They see the fate of the world, what might happen to it, if not for Jesus. And then their role as disciples, their work as disciples, is all about changing what would happen if nobody knows about Jesus. Right? That's really cool. And he says the disciple lives with an eager expectation for all things to be redeemed. And this really reminds me of Romans. All creation longs for the revelation of the sons of God. That's the life of a disciple, just waiting for more and more people to know Jesus, waiting for the redemption of the world. Blessed are the meek. These are those who have renounced their own will and have given up their will and taken on the will of Jesus Christ. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. They don't want their own righteousness to shine in front of others. We'll talk more about that in the visible and invisible church. But they want God's righteousness. They want him. They want him more than anything. They hunger for Jesus. Right? Blessed are the merciful. Those who are merciful, just like Jesus. Those who forgive, even when it's hard to forgive. Blessed are the pure in heart. Again, Bonhoeffer goes through this theme, and you'll hear this over and over again. Their will, the disciples' will, is not their own, but only to do the will of the Father. And so the pure in heart are only pure in heart because their life is directed towards God. Okay. Blessed are the peacemakers. Oh, this one is really fun. You can't just long for peace, you must work for peace. And in this, there's this little important section. It is important that Jesus gives this blessing not merely to suffering incurred directly for the confession of his name, but for suffering in any just cause. You can't just say, oh, look at me. I am the one who is a peacemaker because I am suffering because of my witness to Jesus Christ, and because when I go and I preach the gospel, people are persecuting me. That's not the only suffering, Bonhoeffer says, that a Christian ought to incur. But a Christian ought to incur also the suffering of just doing works of justice. Like Martin Luther King Jr., who fought for civil rights. He suffered not just because people are saying you're a pastor and you want to do what Jesus does, but no, for justice. Think of the person on Amazing Grace, John Newton. Yeah, he suffered because he was anti-slavery. Persecution for a Christian is not only persecution for the sake of the gospel, but suffering for any good thing that they do. In each of the Beatitudes, the blessing that Bonhoeffer says that the disciple receives, it's not wealth, it's not fame, it's not anything else but Jesus Christ himself. In each of the Beatitudes is a call to sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, you receive Christ. And on the coattails of Christ, you receive everything else. All right. Chapter 7, the visible community. Quite quick. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. One, he talks about salt. You are salt and you are light. In the salt section, a Christian that loses her saltiness is equated to a person who knew Christ, and they were the salt of the earth because they're going and doing things for the sake of Jesus and in his name. But then they begin to deny Christ. To lose your saltiness as a Christian is a denial of the person of Jesus Christ himself. Right? And then you are a city set on a hill. You are the light of the world. And Bonhoeffer says you have to be visible. To be a part of the culture that you are in means you're invisible to the world. You're just one of them. But you are a light set on a hill. Be apart, set apart for Jesus Christ. And this is really cool within his own context, right? Because in Germany, the church in Germany were assimilating to the Third Reich and under Hitler. So Bonhoeffer says, no, this is not your role. Your role is not to assimilate, but to be set apart for the sake of Jesus Christ. When the world does something wrong, you are to call it out. Be a visible light in darkness. You're invisible when you assimilate. But at the same time, there is an invisibility to Christians. Your invisibility as a disciple is that you don't get the glory, but God gets the glory. You make visible Jesus and you make invisible yourself in the good things that you do. Okay? I really like that. We are invisible and visible at the same time. And we're only made visible by Jesus, for Jesus. Okay, the righteousness of Christ. Discipleship means adherence to Jesus Christ alone and his righteousness. This, you go through this chapter, and that's quite a meaty chapter. Let me try to kind of put it into one sentence. You are linked to Jesus intimately and intrinsically and truly. You are not good by yourself. You are good. You are righteous because you're linked to Jesus. Bonhoeffer says you're like a train that's gone the wrong way. And then Jesus, the engine, comes along and he links himself to you and then pulls you in the right way. Your righteousness is because you're linked to Jesus, not because of anything else that you do. Okay? Then he goes to the brother. He says, don't be angry at your brother. Pretty straightforward stuff in this, right? But then he says, I like this. The incarnation is the ultimate reason why the service of God cannot be divorced from the service of man. This sentence captures Bonhoeffer's sentiment in this chapter so far, right? I want you to think about this sentence. If God came down to earth as a human, to serve us and to be our servant, and how much more we ought to be the servant of our brother and our sister. Okay, next chapter 10. Woman. First sentence, powerful sentence. Adherence to Jesus allows no free rein to desire unless it be accompanied by love. Love it. You don't have a will of your own. Your will is linked to Jesus. Your will is linked to God, and God is love, and you got to do things that are birthed out of that will of love. And then the second part of this, I think, is quite, again, everything I think is fascinating. I don't know why I keep prefacing everything as I think this is fascinating. I think this is brilliant. I think this is wonderful. He talks about lust and, in fact, any sin as unbelief. Because lust, in this chapter specifically, does not believe God will provide for us whatever it desires, but seeks its own through its own strength. It does not rely on the will of God or in the direction of God or on the power of God to do something, but rather takes things in its own hands. So when we sin, it's like taking things in our own hands and not allowing God to do things for us and in us and in our lives. And Bonhoeffer says that's sinful. Let God direct you. Don't direct yourself. And honestly, in the last sentence of this chapter, I want you to think about it Eucharistically. Right? As they contemplate this body which was given for them, and as they share its life, the disciples receive strength for the chastity which Jesus requires. In the same way that Christ crucifies his body and gives to us himself on that cross, we are called to nail our lust, our sin, and our own bodies to the cross as a sacrifice to Jesus Christ in submission to his will. Love it. Truthfulness, what I'm prefacing with again, what a beautiful chapter. Basically says, speak truth. The moment you make a promise, make an oath, or you swear by something, you're saying everything else that you do, everything else you say might be a lie, but this one sentence is really not a lie. So there's a chance I could break all those other things, but there's no chance I would break this. But at the same time, the moment you make an oath, you make a vow, you are saying, you're giving, pardon me, you are giving breath to a lie. If you don't have to prove what you're saying is true, right, which means you can always break that promise, and you're always speaking in truth, then no one has to question you, no one has to ask for an oath of you. But the moment you even say, I swear to God, or I promise, on my mother's grave, or whatever it is you say, you're bringing doubt into your hearer's mind that this person might be a liar, so he has to prove himself, or is a liar, and he's trying to safeguard himself. Okay? Next chapter, revenge. Don't fight evil. Don't resist evil. Just your resistance of evil is a non-resistance. Why? Here's what Bonhoeffer says. And your resistance to evil is endurance. By willing endurance, we cause suffering to pass. By preparing to suffer without resistance, the Christian exhibits the sinfulness of contumely, and insult. When we allow a bully to just bully us, everybody else can see that, hey, the bully is wrong. But the moment you begin to fight back and punch the bully, then they're like, oh yeah, these two people are just fighting each other. For evil to truly be shown, you have to endure it, and you have to fight back with non-resistance. Okay? Bonhoeffer calls us to non-resistance, yet in his own life, he resisted the Third Reich, didn't he? So as you read this chapter, think about how the paradox of non-resistance and taking a stand against evil. The final chapter is this. The final chapter is the enemy and the extraordinary. In this part of the chapter, Bonhoeffer is saying, pray for your enemy. Right? Don't let your enemy just be a person you have to ignore. pray for him, intercede for him the same way that Jesus Christ is a mediator for you, a sinner. You intercede for your enemy. Though he might have sinned against you, live out love. Be like Christ, who's a mediator to you in your life, and now you are a mediator to your enemy in your life. All right, that's that's my daughter. I'll see you all soon.